She wasn't loud. She wasn't causing trouble. She was simply minding her own business, quiet, invisible, and harmless. But sometimes being quiet is enough to make you a target. On that day, under the blazing sun, a uniformed officer decided her silence was an invitation. With a cruel smirk and the weight of authority behind her badge, she turned an ordinary moment into an act of humiliation. A cold splash, a burst of laughter, and the world kept moving as if nothing had happened. But what no one realized, what she couldn't see, was that the woman she mocked carried a story that stretched far beyond that parking lot. A story that would shake her to the core. Because sometimes the person you think is powerless is raising someone powerful. So who was this quiet woman? And why would the officer soon regret ever crossing her path? Her name was Evelyn. To most people, she was just another face in the crowd, a woman who carried herself quietly, who worked hard, and who never made a scene. She lived for the small, simple joys, tending to her plants on the porch, humming gospel songs on Sunday mornings, and watching her son grow into the kind of man she always prayed he would be. Evelyn had built a life of dignity in a world that often tried to strip that away from her. She wasn't rich, she wasn't loud, and she never sought attention. But those who knew her knew she had a strength forged through years of holding her head high when others tried to push it down. On that particular afternoon, she wasn't expecting anything unusual. She had stopped at a convenience store on her way home, wearing the same soft smile she always carried. The air was heavy with summer heat, and the cold drink she bought was meant to be nothing more than relief from the sun. But sometimes, ordinary moments carry the seeds of something unforgettable. In the parking lot, steps away from her car, someone was watching her, not with kindness, not with indifference, with something far uglier. And in just a few moments, Evelyn's quiet routine would collide with a cruelty she had faced too many times before. Because for some, the sight of a black woman simply existing was enough reason to tear her down. What Evelyn didn't know was that this small act of hate would not end in silence. It would ignite a chain of events far greater than that officer ever imagined. Evelyn walked slowly across the cracked asphalt, the bottle of soda sweating in her hand. The heat pressed down like a heavy blanket, but she didn't mind. She was used to it. What she wasn't used to, though, was the sharp sting of eyes burning into her back. At first, she brushed it off. People stared sometimes. People whispered. But when she turned, she saw the uniform. A female officer leaned against her patrol car, arms crossed, a smirk pulling at her lips. It wasn't the smirk of friendliness. It was the smirk of someone waiting for trouble, even if she had to invent it. Evelyn lowered her eyes, determined to walk past without confrontation. She'd done this dance before. Keep your head down. Don't make a scene. But sometimes silence isn't enough. The officer pushed off the car and strode toward her, boots pounding against the pavement. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She hadn't done anything, just bought a drink. Still, the air shifted as if everyone nearby knew what was coming but chose to stay quiet. The officer blocked her path, eyes scanning her like she was contraband. Hot day, huh? The words dripped with sarcasm. Evelyn nodded slightly, clutching her drink. She tried to step around, but the officer moved with her, cutting her off. Then, with a suddenness that made Evelyn flinch, the officer snatched the bottle from her hand. For a moment, the world froze. The hiss of the cap twisting open, the glint of sunlight on cold liquid. And then, splash. The soda drenched Evelyn, cascading down her blouse and dripping onto the pavement. The officer laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an accident, but a deliberate, cruel sound that echoed through the lot. People glanced, then looked away, their faces etched with the same fear. Don't get involved. Evelyn stood there, soaked, humiliated, her skin sticky, under the sun. Her heart pounded, not just from embarrassment, but from the familiar, suffocating weight of injustice. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but decades of experience told her what that could cost. A raised voice, a wrong move, and she might not go home. The officer leaned in close, whispering words Evelyn would never forget. Words that weren't about law or order, but about hate. And then she walked away, as if nothing had happened, as if Evelyn wasn't standing there covered in humiliation. But humiliation doesn't just disappear. It burns, it hardens, it transforms. Evelyn gathered herself, wiping her hands against her skirt, forcing her trembling body to move. She climbed into her car, gripping the wheel until her knuckles whitened. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of her. As she drove off, her mind spun. This wasn't the first time she'd faced cruelty for the color of her skin, but it was the most blatant, the most degrading in years. And she knew something the officer didn't. Evelyn wasn't just any woman. She wasn't just a quiet figure people could push aside. Because at home, she had raised someone. Someone who had grown into a man with influence, with a voice, with the kind of power that didn't come from a badge, but from truth, from resilience, from leadership. And when he learnt what had happened to his mother, he wouldn't stay silent. The officer thought she had left Evelyn broken. What she didn't realize was that this moment was only the beginning. A spark had been lit, and sparks, when carried by the right hands, can set fire to entire systems. So while the officer walked away, smug and unchallenged, she had unknowingly stepped into a story far bigger than herself, a story that would soon catch up with her, louder, stronger, and impossible to ignore. Because when you target someone you think is powerless, you risk awakening the very force that can hold you accountable. And Evelyn's quiet strength was about to speak louder than she ever had before. The video surfaced quietly at first, just another shaky phone recording uploaded to the internet. But within hours, it spread like wildfire. There for the world. To see was Evelyn, soaked in soda, standing frozen in humiliation, while a uniformed officer laughed. No edits, no excuses, just raw cruelty captured in broad daylight. At first, Evelyn didn't even know it was online. Her son did. He was the one who got the call, the one who clicked play and felt his chest tighten as he watched his mother's dignity torn apart in front of strangers. His mother, the woman who raised him to be strong, who taught him to fight with words and not fists, who told him to believe in justice even when the world didn't. To see her treated like this, it lit a fire he couldn't put out. By morning, the footage was everywhere. News anchors played it on repeat. Social media erupted with outrage. Hashtags trended, strangers demanded accountability, and Evelyn's name was suddenly on everyone's lips. But with the attention came something else: denial, deflection, and excuses from those in power. The department claimed context was missing. The officer claimed it was just a misunderstanding, but there was no misunderstanding. Everyone saw what happened. Everyone knew what it meant. The pressure mounted. Crowds gathered outside the police station, chanting Evelyn's name, demanding answers. Signs lifted high. Voices rose louder. For the first time, the officer who mocked Evelyn in the heat of summer now felt the heat of the nation bearing down on her. Evelyn herself had stayed quiet for days, not because she was afraid. She had lived with fear her whole life, but because she wanted the world to see her, not as a victim, but as a mother. And when she finally stepped forward, flanked by her son, the cameras fell silent. The air was thick with anticipation. Her voice trembled at first, but her words cut like steel. She spoke of what it meant to endure humiliation not just once, but countless times in small ways. She spoke of how it felt to be treated as invisible until someone wanted to make a spectacle out of your pain. She didn't shout. She didn't curse. She simply told the truth. And in that moment, it became clear. This wasn't just about a spilt drink. It was about every quiet injustice that never made the news, every insult swallowed, every time someone looked away instead of standing up. Evelyn had become the face of something larger than herself. The officer sat inside the station, watching the broadcast play on a mounted television. The same smirk that once danced on her lips was gone now, replaced by a pale stillness. She had thought she was untouchable, that her badge gave her power without consequence. But outside, the sound of voices rising together proved otherwise. This was the turning point. The humiliation meant to silence Evelyn had done the opposite. It had given her a platform, a voice amplified by thousands. And yet, as the chants grew louder, one question hung heavy in the air. Would justice follow, or would this moment fade like so many before it? Because Evelyn had stood her ground. The world had seen the truth. Now the real battle was about to begin. The officer who thought she could mock a quiet black woman and walk away unseen soon discovered that humiliation has consequences. Investigations followed. Petitions swelled. People who had never met Evelyn stood shoulder to shoulder in her defense, unwilling to let her pain be brushed aside. The badge that once made the officer feel untouchable now weighed heavy with accountability. But for Evelyn, the true impact wasn't in the headlines or the hearings. It was in the faces of strangers who stopped her in the street, who told her, "I saw what happened. I saw you, and I'm with you." For a woman who had spent so much of her life overlooked, invisible, this sudden recognition was overwhelming. Painful, yes, but also affirming. She wasn't just surviving, she was seen. Her son, too, carried the weight of it. Watching his mother's quiet strength become the foundation of something bigger changed him. He had always admired her, but now he understood her in a new light. She wasn't just the woman who raised him. She was a symbol of resilience for a world desperate to see it. And while the officer's actions had been born out of hate, the ripple effect they created was one of unity, of resistance, of courage. Still, Evelyn knew better than to believe one viral video could erase centuries of injustice. She knew that while the world might remember this moment, countless others would never be recorded, never be acknowledged, never be believed. That truth weighed heavy, but it also fueled her. Because every time someone said her name, every time someone shared her story, it reminded people that silence protects the oppressor, not the oppressed. This wasn't just about Evelyn. It wasn't just about one officer. It was about a system that allowed such cruelty to feel casual, a system where power could be used to humiliate rather than protect. And the real question, the one that lingered after the cameras packed up and the crowds went home, wasn't whether Evelyn had stood strong. She had. It wasn't whether her son had lifted her voice. He had. The question was, would the world listen long enough to change? Because the truth is, Evelyn's story is not rare. It's one of countless moments of quiet cruelty, moments that don't always go viral, moments that vanish the second they happen. For every Evelyn who is seen, there are countless others who suffer unseen. And that is where the impact lies, not in pity, not in fleeting outrage, but in action, in refusing to turn away when injustice unfolds in front of you, in choosing to speak when silence feels safer, in understanding that Evelyn's strength was never meant to stand alone. It was meant to awaken strength in others. She didn't ask to be a symbol. She didn't ask to become a story. But now that she is, the responsibility belongs to all of us, to decide whether her humiliation remains just another viral clip or becomes the turning point that sparks something greater. So the next time you see it, the casual cruelty, the smirk of power turned against the powerless, the question won't be what Evelyn did. We already know what she did. The question will be, what will you do?